In 1944, delegates from 44 nations gathered at a hotel in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, to decide what money would mean after the Second World War. They decided it would mean the dollar. From that moment, the US dollar became the world's reserve currency, the foundation of global trade, the union in which oil was priced, debt was demonetized, and nations kept their savings. For 80 years, that arrangement held. Today, for the first time in 8 decades, that arrangement is changing. And the consequence for every person alive, whether they hold dollar or not, will be profound. This is Coin and Context, and today we're following the money to the end of an era. Before we get into the numbers, we need to understand what this actually means to the world reserve currency. Because this is the part most financial news gets wrong. When the dollar is the global reserve currency, every country that wants to buy oil, pay for imports, or settle international debt needs dollars. That means they hold dollars in their central banks. They buy US Treasury bonds, they fund American government spending. In practice, this gives the United States what the French President Valéry called the exorbitant privilege, the ability to borrow cheaply, run deficits without immediate consequence, and export inflation. If you ever wondered why America can run a multi-trillion-dollar national debt without the dollar collapsing, this is why. The rest of the world keeps buying. That privilege is now under direct, coordinated pressure, and the organization applying that pressure has been named BRICS. BRICS started as an acronym dreamed up by the Goldman Sachs economist in 2001, a convenient grouping of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa as the emerging economic powers to watch. Nobody expected them to take their idea seriously. They did. In 2024, BRICS expanded significantly. Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Iran, Egypt, Ethiopia, and Indonesia joined the bloc. In 2026, India holds the presidency, and the official theme is reducing dependence on the US dollar. Let those words sit with you. This is not a fringe movement. This is a group representing 45% of the world's population and more than 35% of the global GDP purchase power parity. To put that in perspective, BRICS now represents more of the global economy than the G7, and they are building the infrastructure to trade with each other without touching the dollar. The Cross-Border Interbank Payment System, CIPS, is China's alternative to SWIFT. Over 40 bilateral yuan swap lines now exist between nations, allowing direct currency exchange without dollar conversion. The mBridge project, a central bank digital currency corridor linked China, Hong Kong, Thailand, and UAE, is already processing real transactions. These pipes are being built quietly, deliberately. But the most telling indicator of what is happening is not the payment systems, it's the gold. Central banks around the world, particularly in the BRICS nations, have been buying gold at a historic pace. In 2024, the World Gold Council confirmed that central banks purchased 1,045 tons of gold, the third consecutive year above 1,000 tons, more than double the annual average of 2010 to 2021. That is not a coincidence. Gold is the asset that exists outside of any country's monetary system. It cannot be frozen by sanctions, it cannot be inflated away, it cannot be weaponized as a financial leverage the way that the dollar denominated assets can. When Russia was hit with unprecedented financial sanctions following the invasion of Ukraine, including the freezing of 300 billion in sovereign dollar denominated reserves, every central bank in the world took note. The message was unmistakable. Dollar assets can be turned off, gold cannot. China has been accumulating gold reserves at a pace that, if continued, would make it one of the world's largest gold holders within a decade. Russia has already largely exited US Treasury bonds. They are not moving away from the dollar because they hate America. They are moving away from the dollar because they have seen what happens when you hold your savings in someone else's currency, under someone else's rules. Here is where we follow the money through the actual data. In 2001, at the dollar's peak, it represented 72% of all global foreign exchange reserves. Every central bank in the world held a vast majority of its savings in dollars. By the end of 2024, according to the IMF COFA database, that figure had fallen to 57.8%. 14% points in 23 years. This might sound slow. In current terms, it is historically rapid. The projection, if the trend continues on its current trajectory, suggests that the dollar reserve share could fall between 40 and 45% by 2040. Now, to be precise, and coin in context is always precise, the dollar still dominates. The yuan accounts for less than 5% of global reserves. There is no single alternative ready to replace the dollar tomorrow. JP Morgan has noted that the de-dollarization has partially stalled in terms of pure reserve substitution. India's own foreign minister said in 2025 that India is not pursuing de-dollarization. The picture is complex. It's not a collapse, it's a slow, structural, irreversible erosion. And here is why that matters for you, regardless of where you live. In November 2024, as BRICS nations were openly discussing alternatives to dollar settlement, the US response was swift and blunt. Trump threatened 100% tariffs on any BRICS nations that moved to replace the dollar in international trade. 100%. It is on one level a measure of how seriously Washington takes the threat, but it's also a measure of the bind the US is in, because the exorbitant privilege of reserve currency status was not maintained by tariff threats. It was maintained by being the most stable, liquid, trustworthy financial system in the world. When the US weaponized the dollar through sanctions, freezes sovereign assets, and threatening trading partners with tariff punishments for diversifying their savings, it does the work of de-dollarizing for its opponents. Every central bank watching the Russian asset freeze in 2022 asked the same question: could this happen to us? The BRICS infrastructure is, in large part, an answer to that question. Here is the coin and context financial lesson from the BRICS story, and it's one of the most important lessons this channel will ever give you. The currency your savings are denominated in is a political choice. Not just your government political choice, the geopolitical reality of the era you are living in. For 80 years, holding dollars denominated assets was the safest thing you could do. That assumption is no longer unquestionable. This does not mean you should panic sell your dollar assets tomorrow. The dollar remains dominant, the shift is slow, and the alternatives are today nowhere near ready to replace it. What it means is that financial diversification has never been more important. What do central banks do when they are nervous about currency concentration? They buy gold. They diversify into multiple currencies. They hold real assets. The small individual investor does exactly the same thing at a smaller scale. A position in gold, even 5 to 10% of a portfolio, is not a conspiracy theory. It is what every major central bank on the planet is doing right now. At a pace double what it was 5 years ago. Understanding that currencies rise and fall, that reserve status is not permanent, that geopolitical shifts have financial consequences for ordinary people. This is the literacy that creates generational wealth. The dollar built the post-war world. It shaped every trade, every debt, every savings account on the planet. Its gradual retreat will shape the next 50 years. And the people who see it coming, who understand it, who prepare for it, will be positioned very differently from those who don't. This is coin and context. We follow the money.